Still don't get it. It's such a pain dealing with a middle school graduate who lacks common sense. Low education is an embarrassment to the company.
These cold words were hurled at me in front of 70 other new hires. The harshness of the statement silenced everyone instantly. My entire body burned with anger and shame. After being insulted to this degree, I felt no obligation to stick with this job. Understood. It seems this company has no place for me, so I'll be withdrawing my offer acceptance. With a smile, I stood up from my seat. The one who would really be in trouble because of my decision was none other than Rachel, the department head. My name is Jacob Taylor. I'm a 36-year-old video creator, and I've decided it's time for a career change. The person who suggested I switch jobs and introduced me to an advertising company was my father, George Taylor. However, just because I followed his suggestion doesn't mean my family and I have a great relationship. If anything, my father and I have had a strained relationship for years. My father, who earned a significant income at an advertising firm, had absolute confidence in his decisions and was always giving forceful orders to me and the rest of the family. Looking back, he was often right. But as a young man, I couldn't tolerate having my future decided for me. One clear example of my father's overbearing nature was when it came time to decide my path in life. Ever since I was little, my father spared no effort to put me on the right track, enrolling me in prestigious prep schools and pushing me to take private school entrance exams. I have an older sister and a younger sister, but as the long-awaited son, my father had placed especially high expectations on me. However, what fascinated me wasn't the life of a high-achieving elite, but rather music, movies, and other forms of art. As a child, I was captivated by watching these works, and soon I wanted to create them. By middle school, I was making videos on my computer and showing them to my friends. One day, I was asked to create a promotional video for the band, and that became the first production in my life. I poured all the knowledge and skills I had as a middle schooler into the project and posted it on the school's website. Soon after, I received an offer from outside the school from someone who appreciated my style. For the first time, I felt the thrill of being recognized purely for my own efforts. My self-taught skills in video production had earned genuine praise from others. On the day after my 15th birthday, I started my own video production company and began taking on various projects. While I certainly felt joy at having my talent acknowledged, my main motivation was the desire to break free from my father as soon as possible. That's because by the time I was in high school, my father's interference had only intensified, and I wanted nothing more than to leave home as soon as I could. At that time, my work had gained repeat clients, and the company was performing far better than I had expected. I was earning enough to live on. Perhaps the fact that a 17-year-old young creator was behind it all added to the appeal. I wanted to build a career in the field of video production. With that dream in mind, I made the bold decision to drop out of high school and move to France to hone my skills. When I announced my decision to quit high school, my father, George, scolded me harshly. I left home, practically disowned, and threw myself into relentless study and video production after moving to France. A few years later, I returned to the States, but I still kept my distance from my family. After coming back, I continued to work independently, taking on various projects as a video creator. Now, 15 years later, I oversee video production projects, give instructions to team members, and manage the creative process as a seasoned video creator. Through work, I met my wife, and now we're expecting a child. She's 5 months pregnant. As I stroke my wife's growing belly, feeling grateful for the joy in my life, unexpected news reached me. My mother called to tell me that my father had collapsed. Hearing this, I rushed back to my hometown. For the first time in decades, I saw my father, George, lying weak and frail in a hospital bed. With much less strength than I remembered, he held my hand and with teary eyes pleaded with me.
Please, come visit the family. Find a stable job to put us at ease. I can introduce you to the company I used to work for.
Hearing his faint, desperate plea, I couldn't bring myself to refuse. Seeing my once overbearing father crying and begging, I decided to fulfill this first and final act of filial piety. But soon, I realized just how cunning my father could be. After I agreed to take the job, he recovered rapidly, and within 2 weeks, he was cleared for home care. The day after returning home, he was already enjoying his favorite beef bowl with great enthusiasm. Well, Dad's recovery is good news, but if he's fine now, I don't need to take the job. When I tried to back out, my father stopped me, saying he had already made all the arrangements for my employment.
Even though I'm feeling better, now that you have a wife and a child on the way, it's better to have a stable income. If you don't like it, you can quit anytime. Just give working for a company a try.
He said this with a calm expression, tossing a few pieces of his favorite sweets into his mouth after dinner. I was already 35. When I was single, I could go anywhere and do anything on my own. But now, being married with a child on the way, I had started thinking about life in terms of decades. A stable income would bring peace of mind to my wife and child. Once I considered this, it didn't seem right to dismiss my father's proposal out of sheer defiance, as I might have in my younger years. In the end, I decided to join the company my father had recommended. It felt like I was simply following the course my father, George, had meticulously set up for me, which left me feeling unsettled. But as a man, I resolved to keep the promise I had made, and from that day on, I began adjusting my video projects accordingly. I completed my final assignment just before the orientation day at Southfield Agency, a major advertising company my father had introduced me to. On the day of the orientation, I left home early and headed to the event hall where it was being held. The unfamiliar suit felt tight around my neck and waist, and the thought of wearing this every day weighed heavily on me. Even so, I steeled myself and pressed forward, thinking of my promise to my father and the future of my wife and unborn child. When I arrived, many new employees had already gathered and were checking in one by one. While I had been hired through an experienced worker program, most of the others were fresh graduates. Seeing these bright, energetic young people fresh out of college, I felt a pang of nostalgia. Was I ever that vibrant? I wondered as I completed the check-in process and walked down the hallway to the venue. Suddenly, someone called out loudly from behind me.
Hey, you there! Stop slacking off and help out.
The person who abruptly scolded me was a woman in a white business suit. She looked to be in her 40s, and her heels clacked loudly as she walked toward me, scrutinizing me with a condescending gaze.
Oh, I don't recognize your face. What department are you in? What's your name?
I am Jacob Taylor. As for my department, I don't know yet. At my response, she dramatically frowned and raised her voice.
You're saying you don't even know your own department. Don't think you can use a lame excuse like that to avoid doing chores.
Well, I really don't know. I am a new hire, so I am supposed to learn about that starting today. Apparently, she mistook me for someone who was already working at the company. I thought that would be the end of the conversation, but instead, She burst into loud laughter.
What? You're saying you're a new employee at your age? Oh, that's hilarious. You definitely don't look like you're in your 20s.
I'm 35. I was hired through the experienced worker program. Being ridiculed by a stranger right off the bat didn't sit well with me. I intended to cut the conversation short and leave, but the woman persisted.
Experienced worker program? Someone like you, who doesn't look capable of doing much, actually passed the recruitment process? What kind of tricks did you pull?
Oh wow. While it was true that my father had introduced me to the company, I had formally gone through the application process to be here. I gave a vague response, and she crossed her arms, leaning back as if to look down on me even more.
Let me give you some advice. If you work hard for me, I will help you climb the ranks. I'm Rachel Hatber, the sales director of this company. I have connections with the hires, so make sure you stay on my good side.
After declaring this, Rachel walked away, her heels clicking loudly. I was baffled by how rude some employees could be, but I pulled myself together and entered the venue. The spacious hall had rows of tables, separated into sections for new graduates and experienced hires like me. The new graduates all wore similar black suits and had nervous expressions, while the people seated near me, in the experienced hire section, ranged from those who looked as young as high schoolers to those older than me. I found myself curious about the kinds of work experiences they might have had, and looked forward to talking to them later. For now, I sat at my seat, reviewing the materials that had been distributed, and waited for the orientation to begin. The seats gradually filled up, and the orientation started on schedule. According to the materials, the first item on the agenda was a speech from the company president. When the president, Sean Lewis, appeared on stage, everyone turned their attention to him with serious expressions. I straightened up in my seat and listened carefully. From Sean's speech, I could sense his sincerity. He passionately spoke about wanting to invigorate the advertising industry as a whole with the company's efforts. The enthusiasm in his words seemed to inspire the new hires, their eyes beginning to sparkle. Hearing such a committed leader, I felt a bit more optimistic about working at this company. But that optimistic feeling didn't last long. After Sean's speech ended, an announcement was made that there would be a short break before the next segment. The atmosphere relaxed, and quiet chatter began to fill the hall. Looking at the other new hires seated at my table, a young man sitting to my right struck up a conversation.
You're also here through the Experienced Worker Program, right? I'm Kyle Nichols, a web designer. Nice to meet you.
I'm Jacob Taylor, a video creator. Nice to meet you too. Kyle seemed straightforward and had a friendly demeanor, leaving a positive impression. While we exchanged a bit of small talk and low voices, an all too familiar, high-pitched voice rang out again.
Oh my, this table has quite the variety in appearance and age. Is this where they've gathered everyone who isn't part of the new graduate hires?
Standing there was none other than Rachel, the woman who had made snide remarks to me earlier. With a broad smile, she approached and began scanning the members hired through the Experienced Worker Program one by one. Recalling her rude behavior in the hallway, I braced myself. Rachel pulled out some documents and raised her voice further.
Even if you're an experienced hire, do you think people who couldn't even try for a new graduate position can handle working at our company? You probably can't do much, so I will have you start as a gopher.
What kind of thing was this to say to employees who would soon be her colleagues? The other new hires at my table exchanged uneasy glances, unsure how to react. As Rachel hummed a tune and flipped through her documents, The other hires, like me, were left dumbfounded.
No promising candidates this year either. Oh, Nichols.
She glanced at the documents in her hand, then at Kyle, who was seated beside me, and nodded to herself as if confirming something.
Oh, you must be the one everyone's been talking about. Exceptional employees like you are more than welcome. Let's do our best together.
Thank you.
Kyle replied politely, though he seemed puzzled by the sudden praise. His resume must have been quite impressive. I began to reconsider my opinion of Rachel, thinking she might at least recognize talent. But my thoughts were cut short when her next words left me stunned. Rachel turned to me, chuckled condescendingly, and declared loudly,
And then there's the complete opposite. This guy here. You didn't even finish high school, did you? It's brazen of you to think you can work at a major company like ours without a diploma.
The room fell silent in an instant. Realizing this guy referred to me, a wave of anger and humiliation burned through my entire body. Mocked in front of 70 other new hires, I slowly raised my head, my anger simmering. When Rachel met my gaze, she shrugged mockingly and waved her hand as if shooing away a stray dog.
Still don't get it. High school dropouts are so dense, and it's frustrating. There's no way someone like you could handle proper work. Low education is a disgrace to the company.
Understood. It seems this company has no place for me, so I will withdraw my acceptance. There was no reason to tolerate such humiliation just to work here. After all, I had only agreed to this job to fulfill my father's wishes. Now that he was healthy again, there was no need to endure this indignity. With a smile, I announced my decision to withdraw and stood up from my seat. As I made my way to leave, the hall buzzed with murmurs of surprise. Yet Rachel just smirked maliciously, clearly enjoying herself.
A high school dropout like you wouldn't even understand basic instructions if you were my subordinate. At least you're smart enough to realize your incompetence and leave before becoming a burden. Good for you.
She laughed loudly to herself, her voice echoing in the room. There was no point in arguing with someone like her. Resolving to say nothing more, I turned my back on her. It was only when I was about to leave that Rachel seemed to realize I was serious. Grabbing a microphone, she addressed me in a loud voice.
All new hires, return to your seats immediately. Your selfish actions are disrupting the orientation.
Rachel didn't bother retracting her rude remarks. Instead, she singled me out for criticism. By using the microphone so the entire room could hear, she was clearly trying to paint me as the unreasonable one for leaving the orientation midway. This way, Rachel could maintain her image as a respectable superior reprimanding a disrespectful new hire. Earlier, you said people like me are a disgrace to the company. I'm simply acting in line with your words by withdrawing. Why are you stopping me?
It seems there's been a misunderstanding, Rachel replied.
Rachel maintained her confident stance and, if anything, puffed out her chest proudly as she lectured me.
In the working world, you'll often hear things you don't like. Walking away every time that happens isn't exactly professional behavior.
I looked at her in disbelief, but Rachel continued her criticisms through the microphone without the slightest sign of remorse.
That said, if you truly want to decline the offer, I respect your decision. After all, we can't force someone to work if they don't want to.
Rachel made it clear that, in her view, I was the only one being unreasonable. She had likely used tactics like this before to avoid being seen as the villain. I considered loudly recounting our earlier exchange right then and there. But this was the orientation for new hires. If I caused any more of a scene, it would only inconvenience the other new employees. Besides, I had nothing to lose by declining the offer, while Rachel would be the one facing difficulties. With that in mind, I confirmed my withdrawal and laughed. The new hires at my table, including Kyle, looked between Rachel and me with concern, but no one dared to speak up. Feeling many eyes on my back, I loosened my uncomfortable tie as I walked out of the hall. When I got home, I briefly explained the situation to my wife and told her I had decided against working for the company. I left out the specific insults and only mentioned that I had been unfairly judged based on my education. My wife quietly nodded. Having known me for years, she understood my personality and the effort it had put into my career. She didn't seem to think I had thrown away the opportunity in a moment of anger. Without needing much explanation, she told me she trusted my judgment completely and gave me a kind smile. "I'm sorry for worrying you while you're pregnant, but I'll do everything I can to provide for you and our child." With renewed determination, I decided to dedicate myself even more to my work as a video creator. And so, I resumed the career I had been building for years. In the end, my time as a corporate employee was over before it even began. But I realized that being able to choose my own way of working suited me best. Feeling as refreshed as I had when I first started out, I dove into my projects. I was just about to reach out to old clients to look for work when something unexpected happened. I received news that I had won the grand prize in an international video competition I had applied for. The competition focused on videos created in the past 3 years that used AI to deliver smiles and inspiration. Since I had planned to work at a company, I had submitted a video I considered the culmination of my efforts. The news came long after I'd forgotten about the application, and I jumped for joy. Seeing me act like an excited child, my wife was surprised, but couldn't contain her own happiness when she learned about my win. We celebrated that night at our favorite restaurant. As the first American recipient of the award, news of my achievement spread rapidly online that evening and was broadcast nationwide on TV the next day. Congratulations poured in from friends, and job offers started flooding in. Amid the chaos of responding to the attention, I noticed several voicemails on my personal phone. They were from Southfield Agency, the company where I had declined the offer just a day earlier. The first few messages sounded like Rachel, but she was so flustered that I couldn't understand her. I finally understood the situation when I listened to the voicemail from Sean, the president. He requested that I come to the office the next morning. I had already declined the offer, so I wondered if there was some issue. Curious, I decided to visit the company again the next day. The following morning, I arrived at the designated conference room to find several people already gathered. Among them were Sean, who had given a speech at the orientation yesterday, Rachel, glaring at me with a scowl, and for some reason, Kyle, who had been seated next to me during the orientation. It seemed they had all been waiting for me to arrive. The moment I walked in, Rachel raised her voice.
"Jacob, why did you leave yesterday without permission? Because of you, I got reprimanded."
Quiet down. Let him explain the situation first.
Sean snapped, silencing Rachel, who pouted but stayed quiet. Sean gestured for me to sit and began speaking with a calm expression.
Jacob, I saw the news. Congratulations on your award. When the company learned that one of our new hires had won, it caused a big commotion this morning.
According to Sean, the company had formed several internal teams to participate in the contest. As an advertising firm, winning an international award would elevate the company's reputation, so they had dedicated a year to creating their submissions. However, none of their entries made it past the initial rounds. When the news broke that I, a new hire, had won the grand prize, everyone celebrated, thinking an exceptionally talented asset had joined the team. That excitement, however, turned to confusion when it became apparent that I had declined the offer.
Our experienced hire program assumes that the offer leads to formal employment. So, why did you decline before officially starting?
It seemed no one had informed Sean about what had transpired at the orientation. While annoyed at the lack of communication, I explained everything that had happened during the event. Naturally, Rachel didn't sit quietly.
That's a misunderstanding. In my interpretation, it wasn't like that.
But each time, Sean sternly cut her off, allowing me to continue my explanation. I was insulted about my education and age, leading me to conclude that I couldn't work at this company. I decided to withdraw from the offer to avoid disrupting the other new hires or causing further issues, as Rachel had suggested.
I see. So that's what happened.
Sean replied, letting out a deep sigh and burying his head in his hands. Seeing this, Rachel's eyes flared as she turned on me again.
You're causing trouble for Sean. If you feel bad about it, you should take back your resignation.
Still as rude as ever, Rachel aggressively pushed me.
Even if you didn't finish school, you won an award, so you can work here. Why are you just standing there? Sign the acceptance letter already.
Enough. Do you know who you're talking to?
Sean's booming voice cut through the room before I could respond.
What?
Rachel, show some respect. Do you realize you've been incredibly rude to Jacob Taylor, the son of our former CEO and current chairman, George Taylor?
Rachel froze, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Her face turned pale as she stumbled back, her knees shaking until she collapsed into a chair.
What? The chairman's son? But I thought the new hire this year was your son, Sean?
My son? What are you talking about? I only have daughters, and none of them have joined the company.
Sean replied, visibly irritated. Rachel, trembling, pointed at Kyle with a shaky finger.
Then, what about Kyle? I thought he was your son, so I've been treating him kindly since yesterday.
He has the same last name as me, but he's a stranger. Did you bring him here without verifying anything?
Kyle flinched as all eyes turned to him, looking startled. Even at a glance, it was clear Kyle bore no resemblance to Sean. It seemed Rachel had misunderstood and dragged Kyle into the meeting without any basis. Though I felt sorry for Kyle, Rachel wasn't done making excuses.
I admit I was mistaken, but this means Jacob joined through nepotism, doesn't it?
Jacob was not hired through connections. We evaluated his abilities and decided to bring him into the company. He's talented enough to win an international award. How can you still deny his value?
Sean's anger flared as he pulled out a thick file. It was my resume, the one I had submitted during the job application process. In high school, I had started experimenting with video production and founded a company. After moving to France, I created web and video projects that earned recognition, eventually leading to opportunities to produce visuals for live performances by artists. When I returned to the US, I leveraged that experience to gain attention as a film creator known for dynamic camera work.
The vibrant visual style and rich storytelling in Jacob's work make me a personal fan. I believed he could positively influence not only our younger employees, but the entire company. That's why I asked George to encourage him to join us.
I see. I just assumed that he was a high school dropout.
Rachel stammered, her body trembling under Sean's piercing glare. Despite her attempts to shift the blame with tears and excuses, Sean's anger didn't waver. Rachel glanced around desperately, but realizing neither I nor Kyle would come to her aid, slumped her shoulders in defeat.
Rachel, don't you have something to say to Jacob?
I understand.
Reluctantly, Rachel apologized me. Even though it was obvious she was only apologizing because Sean had forced her to, I accepted it as a formality. Apparently, Sean shared my sentiment, as he let out a relieved sigh just as a secretary approached to speak with him.
Excuse me for a moment. Jacob, could you stay here a little longer?
I don't mind. Knowing that Sean would likely inform my father about everything, I chose to stay put rather than risk complicating things further. I assumed nothing else would happen, but I was proven wrong. As soon as Sean's footsteps faded, Rachel abruptly raised her head, glaring at me sharply.
I apologized, so we're even now. You'll come to work tomorrow, right? Otherwise, I'll be scolded for letting a golden opportunity slip through my fingers.
No, I already declined the offer, so I won't be returning. I replied firmly, surprised by how quickly her attitude had shifted. Grinding her teeth in frustration, Rachel refused to back down.
Think about my position. I've been getting blamed all morning for driving you away. You should be the one begging to stay since I was willing to hire someone with your lack of education.
It became clear that her apology had been insincere and that she still looked down on me. Her behavior, full of contempt, finally pushed me to my limit. You've been belittling me as a dropout since yesterday, but for your information, I studied film at Sorbonne University while living in France.
Sorbonne? So what? I graduated from a prestigious private university in New York.
Rachel retorted, folding her arms as if proud of her credentials. However, her smug expression quickly disappeared. When Kyle, who had been quietly listening, suddenly became animated, his cheeks flushing red with excitement.
What? Sorbonne University is a world-renowned institution that produces top talent in the film industry. It's consistently ranked in the top 20 globally, way harder to get into than most universities.
Huh? World rankings?
Rachel still seemed clueless, causing Kyle to shake his head in exasperation.
It's an incredible achievement. For context, universities like Harvard are in the top 30, and others like MIT fall lower. The gap between American universities and Sorbonne is massive. Jacob isn't just a top-tier filmmaker, but also highly educated.
Kyle continued to gush about how impressive it was, excitedly asking me questions about my time at Sorbonne. Rachel, who had been observing the situation, initially stood with her mouth agape, but her face gradually turned bright red with a mix of anger and embarrassment.
So what? Sorbonne? Sorbonne, whatever. I'm a department head at this company. That makes me far superior to you rookie employees.
That's why I've already told you, I'm not joining this company. I replied with a sigh, reiterating my decision to decline the offer. Just then, a low, intimidating voice spoke from behind Rachel.
Rachel, it seems you still lack self-awareness.
Sean, since when have you been here?
Sean, having returned from his earlier task, stood glaring at Rachel with a fearsome expression that resembled a guardian statue.
Our company prides itself on welcoming talented individuals from all backgrounds. Judging someone based on their education is unacceptable.
Caught red-handed making snide remarks, Rachel couldn't muster a defense. She opened and closed her mouth several times, flustered, while Sean pressed her further.
I also received another report about you, Rachel. Kyle, would you mind explaining?
Yes, sir.
Kyle, who had been called upon, nervously stood up. Then, right in front of Rachel and me, who were both visibly shocked, he began to make an astonishing accusation.
After yesterday's orientation, Rachel asked me to exchange personal contact information with her. I declined at first, but she kept insisting, trying to get my phone number and address.
Be quiet. That has nothing to do with this.
Rachel's face turned crimson as she desperately tried to silence Kyle. She moved as if to approach him, but froze when Sean gave her a sharp glare.
Please continue, Kyle. Are you saying Rachel was making advances toward you?
Yes, I was confused as to why she was so persistent with a newly hired employee like me. But today, it all makes sense. Rachel thought I was your son, Sean.
As Kyle pointed this out, Rachel collapsed to the floor, burying her face in her hands.
That's not true. It's a misunderstanding. I only wanted him to feel comfortable coming to me with any issues.
Rachel, how could you?
Sean's voice thundered, cutting off Rachel's weak excuses. Ignoring her groveling, Kyle continued with his account. After the orientation, Rachel had invited him to a one-on-one dinner. Despite his repeated refusals, she kept pressing until he reluctantly agreed. During the dinner, Rachel excessively praised him and repeatedly assured him that she would support him. Kyle, his face tight with discomfort, handed his phone to us.
Here's the evidence. I've received numerous personal messages from Rachel since early this morning. I didn't know what to do, so I reported it to the company.
Stop. Don't show them that.
Rachel screamed, her face streaked with sweat and tears, but it was too late. The screen Kyle showed us was filled with messages from Rachel, their content clearly inappropriate. Most of the messages were filled with sweet, romantic language, as if they were intended for a lover. The abundance of heart emojis and symbols made it immediately clear that the content was highly inappropriate for a manager to send to a subordinate. Were you trying to pressure Kyle into a relationship because you thought he was Sean's son?
So what if I was? Love is free. I don't want to be judged by age or title.
Having her message exchanges exposed to Sean, it seemed Rachel had nothing left to hide. Rachel abandoned all pretense and brazenly shot back at me. Honestly, Rachel, you're the last person who should be talking about not judging people by age or education, given how you've treated me. And for the record, it's entirely inappropriate for a superior to pressure a subordinate into a relationship.
I don't care anymore. If Kyle isn't the president's son, I am not interested in him.
Finally, Rachel collapsed to the floor, planting both hands on the ground and wailing openly without regard for her surroundings. After her outburst subsided, Rachel slumped in silence, only to be escorted out of the room by security guards summoned by Sean.
I'm sorry you had to witness such a disgraceful scene, Jacob. And Kyle, I deeply regret the unpleasant experience you endured.
Sham said, letting out a heavy sigh.
I will personally ensure Rachel is held accountable for her actions. Kyle, I hope you'll continue working with us without worry.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I look forward to contributing to the company.
Encouraged directly by Sean, Kyle expressed his gratitude, his sincerity evident. Sean smiled slightly at Kyle's enthusiasm before turning to me.
Jacob, I would still like you to join the company as initially planned if you're willing.
I'm sorry, but I've decided to focus on my own work. I had already declined the offer, and thanks to the news of my award, I was receiving numerous job requests. Although I felt bad for Sean, I had no intention of returning to the company. Recognizing my firm decision, Sean gave a wry smile.
I see. I apologize for asking repeatedly. In that case, would you be open to serving as a special advisor for the company? Your insights would be invaluable.
If I can be of help, I'd be glad to assist. I've always been interested in the company my father worked so hard to build. I replied with a smile. Sean's face lit up as he extended his hand, and we exchanged a firm handshake. Rachel later became the subject of an internal investigation. It revealed that she had repeatedly exploited her position to harass subordinates, assigning grueling tasks to some while favoring others. Worse, it was discovered that over several years, she had embezzled company funds to pay for dates with her favored employees. Facing mounting evidence, Rachel finally issued an apology, but Sean took decisive action. She was terminated for cause and faced a lawsuit for damages. Burdened with debt to pay off the damages, Rachel searched for a new job, but her condescending attitude remained unchanged. As a result, no one was willing to hire her, and she now scrapes by with day-to-day gig work just to cover her living expenses. Despite once boasting so much about her education and titles, Rachel now works under younger supervisors who frequently reprimand her. As for me, my personal life flourished after that. My child was born safely, and the indescribable joy of holding my baby for the first time rivaled the excitement of winning my award. When I exclaimed how happy I was, my wife burst into laughter. My father, too, was overjoyed by the birth. Whenever we visited my family, he would dote on his grandchild, his face glowing with pride. Having fully recovered from his illness, he was healthier than ever. And I realized I needed to work even harder to match his vitality. Meanwhile, I continued my role as an advisor for Southfield Agency. During my visits, I often ran into Kyle, who never failed to praise my work.
I saw your latest project, Jacob. The vibrant colors are incredible. Please teach me how you achieve that.
Hearing him say things like that and seeing his enthusiasm, I plan to pass on the skills and knowledge I've accumulated. My company has continued to release work successfully since then. Recently, I've been receiving many requests from both domestic and international artists, and my video creations can now be seen in TV commercials and on the internet. Inspired by my experiences, I've taken steps toward new challenges. Having my life and efforts dismissed by Rachel once forced me to reevaluate how I view the world, and it's given me a fresh perspective on how I want to contribute to society. Until now, I've been creating video content for clients, but this time, I wanted to work on something that was entirely my own. Driven by this desire, I released my debut short film as a director, which went on to win numerous international film awards. Reflecting on this, I've come to realize that no matter what happens in life, how we perceive and process those experiences can become a source of growth. Looking ahead, I see even more opportunities opening up before me. I want to continue creating video works that brighten people's spirits,